Good morning. I thought I must take some water after that, I think, very exciting session all of you seem to have had in the morning with Ms. Kiran Bedi. Now, this is, I'm really extremely delighted to be here this morning. And yesterday I had, there was an occasion and I had opportunity to interact with some of you. And I came to know that all of you come from, most of you come from various diverse fields. And the kind of enthusiasm that I have seen in all of you is really quite infectious. In fact, I feel inspired sort of talking to you. Now, you are embarking on life's journey. I don't want to sound philosophical, but you are the generation next. And I'm delighted to share some of my thoughts. So what I have tried to do is that based on my experience, I have listed out six basic principles which I have learned as something which should be the guiding principle for anyone who is in public life, whether it's in business or it is in administration or it is in some company you are running or you are working in the social sector. So I'll just quickly highlight those 6 points based on my experience, and I will draw very quickly from my experiences. Now, given the constraint of time, I will sort of run through the 6 points and then try and leave about 7 or 8 minutes at the end or maybe 10 minutes at the end for some question and answer. The first point that I learned in my life and in my career throughout, and I'm not saying when I was in the Reserve Bank, but I started working from 1980. I joined the Indian Administrative Service, the IAS, in 1980, so it's been a pretty long time, more than 4 decades. So one thing which I learned was that one should make the best out of every situation. You don't have control over the kind of conditions which are given to you. The conditions are given. The conditions are there and you are in that and you have to really perform and you have to really work. So therefore, one should really try to do the best of every situation. There can be some conditions, there can be some situations which are not to your liking, but then there is no point in grumbling over it, brooding over it, but I think one should try to do the best out of it. Going back about 2.5 decades in my own career, once I was, occupying a very important position in the state government. I am from the Tamil Nadu cadre, and suddenly I was shifted to what was considered as not a very, was considered as a kind of an inconsequential position. After being secretary, I was made commissioner tourism. So it was considered to be inconsequential. I don't know why. I mean, there is no reason as to why it should be considered inconsequential. But then, having joined there after about a week or so, I thought, let me try and make the best out of it. And today when I look back, I think those 2.5 years, I worked as Commissioner Tourism outside the Secretariat. I think they were one of the most satisfying periods of my entire tenure. Two main reasons. We sort of launched the branding of Tamil Nadu, that is Enchanting Tamil Nadu. And my team and we worked on developing new destinations. So there is this area in Tamil Nadu called Chettinad. Those of you who are from South, you would know, or others would have heard of the famous Chettinad chicken. It's from that area. Now, Chettinad has got a lot of old mansions and heritage villas and other things which are all lying empty because the owners of the houses would come there only once in a year. So we encourage some of these people to develop into, some kind of boutique hotels and homestay facilities and other things. And that really caught on. In fact, after we launched the Chettinad Heritage Tourism campaign, within 1 year, the Time magazine wrote an article on Chettinad tourism, which goes to show the success of that drive. So what I'm trying to say is that any given situation may not be to your liking, situations will not be to your liking, but one has to make the best out of it. The second point I would like to mention is that one has to lead from the front. When you are part of an organization, whether you are its leader, you are in a leadership position, or you are somewhere in the hierarchy, or you are a part of the team, I think whatever is your assigned responsibility, one should really lead from the front. Challenges keep coming, and I remember when the COVID hit all of us, in 2020, March. None of us, nobody knew what it is going to be, what is the depth of this COVID pandemic, how long it is going to last. Nobody had absolutely any idea. The earlier economic and financial challenges which we all faced came from economic factors, came from financial factors, came from certain industrial failures or failure of the productive system in some manner or the other. But here was a biological crisis, a virus causing not only huge damage and posing challenge to human safety and health, but it was something which completely upset the economic systems, the financial systems across the country. Now, nobody had absolutely an idea how long it is going to last. You all know a nationwide lockdown was announced, followed by several months of semi-lockdown because of social distancing and other things which we had to follow. Now, obviously, in that kind of a system, that kind of a situation, the financial systems have to work. The economy has to function. Factories, many factories stopped working. Many businesses stopped working. People switched over to work from home and similar other concepts. Now, similar other style of working. So what do you do in that kind of a situation? In the Reserve Bank, we launched a series of measures. I'm not going into it. Many of you may be familiar in terms of reducing interest rates, in terms of giving liquidity, in terms of announcing moratorium on bank loans, in terms of announcing restructuring of bad loans which were facing the COVID crisis. Now, during that entire period, there were four things which came out, which really helped us a lot. Number one is that it is very important to take your team along. You cannot be a loner and expect to perform. It's like any match, whether it's a football match or a cricket match, you can't be a sole player who is expected to perform and do wonders. You need team spirit, you have to take the team along. Secondly, one has to keep an open mind. Allow everyone to speak. Listen to everyone. And it is a principle which I have always followed. Allow the junior-most person, allow the person sitting in the last row in any meeting or group discussion. Encourage him or encourage her to speak and share some thoughts. And I have found some of the best suggestions have often come from sources where you expected it to come from the least. And so therefore, it is very necessary to have an open mind, listen to everyone, but eventually take your own decisions. And once a decision is taken, if you are in a leadership position, you have to own the decision. There has to be ownership of the decisions. Don't distance yourself from the decision. If the decision succeeds, share the credit with your entire team. If it fails, because all measures you take in life cannot succeed, there can be failures. If it fails, take responsibility. Don't shift the blame to others. So share the credit of success with your entire team. If there is an adverse outcome, then please take responsibility and own it up and say that, yes, I had taken the decision and I own it. And then set about what do I do to get over the adversities or the failure or whatever you call. And decision making ultimately involves a lot of prudence. You have to be prudent, but at the same time, the risk-taking spirit also has to be there. Risks have to be properly evaluated. You just don't go and jump into the water. You have to properly, before jumping in, evaluate how many crocodiles are there in the water, if any, or what is the depth of the water. Am I able to swim into it? Evaluate the situation and then take calculated, measured risks. And always think of mitigating measures. For example, if you are taking a risk, it is very important, I have learned through my own personal experience, if your decision goes wrong, do you have the capacity to contain the damage? I'll give you one example. In the economic system, in the financial system, liquidity has got a very important role. Today, you must be reading in the business newspapers that there is a liquidity stress. And in the Reserve Bank, we foresaw that there will be a liquidity stress in the months of February and March. So therefore, when I was in the RBI in December, we reduced the CRR and released about 1,16,000 crores of rupees, and we had a slew of measures lined up. But I'm not talking of the current situation. I'm talking going back again to COVID. So liquidity is the, you have to keep the wheel of finance moving. So in a crisis situation like COVID, lot of liquidity had to be injected into the system. But when you inject liquidity, past experience shows that it tends to create some kind of an indization. If liquidity is allowed to persist for too long, if it is allowed to remain in the system for too long, it leads to inflation, it leads to asset price bubbles, and it leads to other kind of adverse situations which will be difficult to contain. In the past, after the global financial crisis 2008, world over, a lot of liquidity was released into the system, and that phase continued for quite some time, leading to high inflation and other kind of financial risks which many economies faced. So we had therefore learned from our experience. So this time around, what we did is therefore, liquidity is like a Chakravyuh. In Mahabharata, there is Chakravyuh. It's very easy to enter into the Chakravyuh, very difficult to get out of it. Similarly, easy to announce liquidity measures, infuse liquidity, but very difficult to pull it out, because the timing of pulling out is always very difficult. So what we did is that we announced liquidity measures for limited periods of time, for 6 months, for 1 year, for going up to 3 years. And we said that this liquidity has been given for this particular purpose. It was targeted. It had predetermined end dates, that it will be withdrawn after 1 year, it will be withdrawn after 3 years, so that the stakeholders in the system know when the liquidity will be pulled out, and they can manage their affairs accordingly. So therefore, that was the kind of mitigant we provided. And supposing we needed that liquidity to remain in the system for longer, we always had the option of extending it. So therefore, I think any risk that you take should be properly evaluated, and there should be a method, and you should evaluate whether am I in a position to control it? Am I in a position to mitigate the risk and pull myself out of that problem? And the third point I talked about, I said 6 points. The first was make the best of every situation. Number 2, lead from the front. Don't try to hide behind the problem. Number 3, think positive and think out of the box. And when I say out of the box, it's basically you have to look for different kind of solutions. There are certain standard solutions. I'll give you the example of the Yes Bank experience. Many of you might have read. In fact, it has become the Reserve Bank's approach of resolving the problem of the Yes Bank has now become a very interesting case study in many management institutes and IIMs in India. Now, when the Yes Bank problem confronted us, till that time, the earlier approach, which had been followed for many decades, was to merge that particular bank with a bigger bank. But this time around, we did not want to do that, because the moment you merge a weak bank with a stronger bank, you are also pulling down the stronger bank. And the stronger bank will take years to recover out of the crisis that it was facing. So what we did is that we launched upon a new idea, a resolution plan led by banks and led mostly by banks. So State Bank of India and a few other banks put in equity money, and we put that money as equity in the Yes Bank and bailed it out of the crisis. And today, I'm happy to report that the Yes Bank is very much back on the rails. So therefore, one has to think of new solutions. One has to challenge the traditional solutions. I'm not saying traditional solutions are always bad. Sometimes the traditional solution can be, the best medicine, but always evaluate, do I have a better way of dealing with a problem? The fourth challenge, the fourth principle which I have learned is that when you are confronted with a situation, I think one has to, focus on systemic issues rather than doing some incrementalism, fixing one issue here, one issue there. I think one has to basically look at carrying out systemic changes. The kind of financial crisis that India witnessed because of COVID, because of the war in Ukraine, and because of so many other factors. What we did, therefore, is in the Reserve Bank, we focused on the entire financial system and completely restructured the regulatory architecture for banks, for NBFCs, for cooperative banks, for digital lenders. I mean, it will take me a long time to explain each of these, but we have sort of completely recast the regulatory architecture, the broad framework within which these institutions have to work. And fifth and sixth points, I shall be very quick. The fifth point I have learned is that one has to be futuristic. One has to think in the long term. It was this approach which led us to introduce the central bank digital currency, CBDC, the e-rupee in India as a pilot project. Many questions have been raised internationally. There are countries which are still talking about the potentialities and the utilization of CBDCs, but we clearly saw that CBDC is going to be the currency of the future. The central bank digital currency is going to be the currency of the future, and Reserve Bank is, I think, among the 4 or 5 central banks in the world which has launched this CBDC. So one has to therefore think long term and think be futuristic. And finally, sixth point, the last point, is that communication has to be effective. Whatever decisions you take, it has to be communicated. It has to be communicated effectively. People must understand. And in communication, the basic principle is be simple, be straight. Don't speak convoluted language. Don't speak complex sentences. Don't try to, mix up and complicate issues. Be simple, straight, direct. Because the purpose of communication is that you must reach out to the wider audience. So any decision, anything that you are doing should be backed by effective communication. My effort, along with my colleagues in the Reserve Bank when I was there, was to demystify the Reserve Bank. There is a lot of, people think what is going on in Reserve Bank. Our effort was to demystify the Reserve Bank. And I am very happy to note that, a larger number of people, the larger cross-section of people take interest in what the Reserve Bank is doing. Yesterday evening, I had, gone to Connaught Place, and there were youngsters like you who were coming and, wishing me and all that. I entered into one joint to have coffee. My wife was there. And when we were coming out of the coffee, the security guy who opens the door, he said, ki Sahab, namaskar. I said, namaskar. He said, sir, kaise hain? I said, बहुत अच्छा हूँ. आप कैसे हो? He said, मैं भी बहुत बढ़िया हूँ. Then he said कि आपको कोविड के टाइम में आपको बहुत देखा सर. और आपके बारे में उस वक्त हमने बहुत सुना और अखबार में लगातार हम पढ़ते रहे. आप मतलब क्या कह रहे हैं, क्या आरबीआई में क्या हो रहा है. तो कोई भी कम्युनिकेशन हो, उसका डायरेक्ट सिंपल होना चाहिए. कोई भी डिसीजन हो, कुछ भी काम करें आप, वो डायरेक्ट और सिंपल होना चाहिए. सो टू कंक्लूड, आई वुड लाइक टू से face the challenging conditions, face every challenge with grit and determination, take the driving seat and navigate a difficult terrain. The future belongs to the youth, to the young entrepreneurs, to the young innovators, to the young administrators, to the young social entrepreneurs, to the young professionals, whichever field you are. I think the future belongs to you. And the guiding principle for this bright young generation should be, let's do it, and let's do it now. Thank you. I think I have 5 minutes left for the question.
So if you want more to be in panel, keep it short and straight. Okay? Fine. Can we have the mic, please? Okay, wait. One from the front and one from the back. I don't want to do injustice. Yes, you can go for it. Yes. Okay, you can ask directly. Sorry. Yeah, sir. Come, quick. Run. Sorry.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I am always impressed by your decisions, sir. Coming from a finance and banking background, my father has served in NABARD Bank. I am currently pursuing chartered accountancy course. And sir, you are my inspiration. I have also placed your photograph on my study table. So, so, sir, my question to you is, given the rapid advancements in fintech and digital currencies, and since you have been at the forefront of the development of CBDC, how do you envision the future of financial inclusion in India, which will lead us to become world's third largest economy? And what role can young people play in driving this transformation?
Okay. Now, you will be amazed to see the kind of financial awareness that we have in the country today. Sometimes there is an impression, yes, there is still a lot of work to be done. I am not saying that everybody is financially literate and financially aware, but you will be really amazed to see the kind of financial awareness which has come about in our country over the last few years. I think the Jan Dhan account, the entire Jan Dhan account and all the other initiatives that have been taken both by the government and by the Reserve Bank has created a lot of awareness. And now the question is of inclusion. One is awareness, the other one is inclusion, making everyone a part of the formal, the formal financial system. And in that, the idea is to see that the banking system, the credit system reaches every nook and corner of the country. So today, therefore, digital lending, which the banks and NBFCs have adopted, digital lending is reaching every nook and corner of the country, and it's progressing rapidly. In Reserve Bank last year, on behalf of the Reserve Bank, I announced the launching of a ULI scheme, Unified Lending Interface. So it is a platform which has been set up, and all the information that a lender, that a bank requires to sanction a loan, all those information is connected online to the platform. I have seen myself that a loan, a small loan to buy a to buy some, cows, milk animals, or a small loan to start a small business, a small micro enterprise, I have seen loans being sanctioned in 10 minutes. Exactly 10 minutes, you apply, it's a system in your mobile phone or iPad, you apply. It goes on asking you questions. What do you want? You say, I want a loan. For what? You say, to buy 2 cows. He says, what variety? It gives you a menu. So you go on filling it up at the, it would have asked for your Aadhaar number, your bank account number and all that. So in 10 minutes, then finally it tells you, okay, for 2 cows, this is the loan amount, this is the interest, and this is the processing fee. Are you willing? You say yes, and take it from me, once you click it, within minutes, within the next 3 to 4 minutes, the sanction amount, the amount not only gets sanctioned, but it gets credited to your bank account, and you get a message on your mobile that loan has been sanctioned. So I think a lot of work is happening on financial inclusion. I see a lot of potentiality. There is still a lot of distance to cover, but I think the progress has been phenomenal.
A very good morning, sir. I'm Meera from Haryana, a PhD scholar.
Just hold it closer.
Okay, sir, my question is basically I would like to point out the fact that RBI has never had a female governor since its inception. So do you think that government is missing on some important viewpoints of the women? And also it is said that women are very prudent in financial decision making than men. So do you think we will be able to ever break that glass ceiling?
No, I mean, I can't predict the future, but let me tell you that there have been women deputy governors in the Reserve Bank, and there have been many women officers who occupy very senior positions even today in the Reserve Bank of India. In fact, the entire monetary policy department, I don't know if some people from RBI would be watching this, the entire monetary policy department is dominated by women. The the Department of Economic and Policy Research, which is one of the largest departments which does a lot of research, we call it DEPR in RBI. The Department of Economic and Policy Research is dominated by women economists. Many of them are PhDs. So therefore, the women's voice is very much there, and you need not have any apprehensions or doubt about that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll stop there? Okay. So thank you very much for, I think there are many questions. I would have liked to take more. Thank you. Thank you for thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you.